know, active. And then I'll introduce our speaker for today, Stef Bronzwaer, European Food Safety Authority in Parma, Italy, as already said. Stef is a medical doctor who serves as a research coordinator at the European Food Safety Authority in Parma, Italy. His domains of expertise include One Health, scientific cooperation, antimicrobial resistance surveillance, research, communicable diseases, and food safety. Stef has previously worked in the infectious disease unit of the Istituto Superiore di Sanità in Rome, Italy, and also in the Department of Infectious Disease Epidemiology of the National Institute of Public Health and the Environment in the Netherlands. Before joining the European Food Safety Agency in 2006, Stef worked at the European Commission in Luxembourg, where he held responsibility for a number of European surveillance networks on communicable diseases. Stef will have a contribution in which he actually falls back on his experience at the European Food Safety Agency, starting from the fact that at European level, One Health is being recognized as an important team today and for the future, and that we expect that large amounts of research and other money will be made available in the future. From there, of course, there is a lot of perspective for different activities, amongst which research. Stef, please, you have the floor for 35 minutes. I see that there is a transcript automatically being produced. Can I avoid it? I think I must avoid it. How should I do that? Is that under settings? Can somebody guide me in this? Okay, yeah. So, Stef, 35 minutes. All attendants are, of course, free to post questions in the chat. After Stef's presentation, I will make a selection out of questions having been posted, meaning that not every question will be treated during this seminar, but Stef assured me that he is ready to address questions not being addressed here in the webinar afterwards, for instance, through email. I hope that this has been clear for all of you. Stef, you are probably loading your presentation. So after the presentation is loaded, I believe we can really start.
It seems there is a technical problem. I can't hear you anymore. Not sure if you can hear me.
I do hear you.
That's rather unfortunate at this time point. Okay. And can you see the screen? I'll try connecting through the mobile phone then, because here it seems I'm stuck.
People in the audience, we tested this 15 minutes ago and it worked perfectly. Yeah.
Exactly. The application is not responding, it says, unfortunately. Really rather unfortunate.
Stef, can you disconnect
I'll try to reconnect. Yes,
Yeah.
indeed. Yeah. Sorry for this. No, seems all very. I'm trying to disconnect to be able to reconnect.
For participants who just joined, we have a little technical issue. Our speaker in Parma, Italy, had to disconnect with the view, of course, to reconnect as soon as possible. It seems that there is a major issue there in Parma.
Hello.
Yes,
Am I back
welcome back,
again?
Stef.
Yes, I'm
Welcome
really
back.
terribly sorry. Seems there is a network issue here in the house. I'm now trying to finish my presentation.
So in the meantime, I will recall that questions for Stef are welcome in the chat, and that after the presentation, we will pick a few of them. Other questions can be addressed directly with Stef through email. The presentation is there, Stef?
Good, excellent. Then it unfortunately my screen still freezes a little, but if you can hear me all right, still troubles here. I'm really sorry. Can you see the screen indeed?
Yes. Yeah.
And you can hear me. Okay, very good. Thank you very much for having me. Again, apologies for the bad connection. But compliments for taking up this One Health issue. I won't touch anything on the screen anymore. Healthy people from the One Health perspective. So my pleasure to speak to you here from the European Food Safety Authority today in the first of series of to prepare for the meeting that you will have next week to consider how to take One Health further in your academia, which I think is a very timely and a very challenging task ahead. So I'm happy to give a little bit of experience from our side as a food safety risk assessor, and also tell you a bit about what we're doing on capacity building together with other EU agencies and also in the EU framework, obviously. So that hopefully gives you some food for thought, where it's obvious that I'm coming from a practitioner's perspective and not so much from an academic perspective. The time I was in academia, unfortunately, is already some years ago when I studied. So One Health. What is One Health? Not such a straightforward question, unfortunately. Actually, it's relatively recent concept. I think it's started actually to be mentioned since 2004 in world conferences where the term One Health was coined. And still today we see different perspectives on One Health, and it's not at all straightforward to have a common understanding. Traditionally, you can see a bit two different, and there's a kind of an evolution in these two different views of One Health. Maybe the concept where it started was a rather anthropocenic view, namely that how human health is affected by animal health and plant health, and especially those where it touches between these three compartments. There they would consider what is as a One Health approach. And that has evolved a little over time to a more wider concept of One Health, namely what encompasses basically all three compartments, so human health, animal health, and plant health, the environment. So it's not so much only the cross section, it's how each of the different sections interacts with the other sections. It's not so much human health focused only, not exclusively, but it also understands the interaction between the different sectors.
Stef, are you going through the presentation, through the slides? Because we are stuck with the first slide here.
Okay, no, indeed. I'm moving it on my screen. And does it now show on a different slide?
No. So here we don't have the presentation mode. We have the editing mode.
Okay, that's odd indeed. There's a lot of strange things happening today, unfortunately. Because according to my screen, it would display correctly. I'll try moving something here. There you go. Still in the same mode now?
Yes, no change.
No change. To do then I stop sharing and restart sharing, see if that solved the issue. And I can maybe try sharing the whole, but that doesn't work with. Here you go. Now it should be back again.
Yes.
Presenting. And you
we
can
are
see
on slide number 3.
3. Excellent. Okay, very good.
But not in presentation mode.
Now it's moving to presentation mode on my screen.
Yes,
Also
we
with you?
have it.
Excellent.
Yes.
Okay, good. So here you see the depiction that I explained earlier, the two mainstream concepts of One Health, how it evolved over time. But luckily, in fact, since 1 year, a bit more than 1 year now, there is a One Health definition agreed between the four main global players, FAO, WHO, and WOHA, the former called OIE, together with the United Nations Environmental Programme. And they agreed a year ago on a definition, very broad definition, as you see on screen, where One Health is defined as an integrated, unifying approach that aims to sustainable balance and optimize the health of people, animals, and ecosystems. And here you see from the definition how it actually is this more balanced, wider view of One Health, not the original or rather restrictive view of One Health. In this definition, there's also it's a document defining actually One Health from their perspective, and they also nicely explain the concepts of transdisciplinary. So it means cooperation across different sectors, across the different domains, human, animal, and ecosystems domain, and across tiers. So it's One Health by necessity goes across local, regional, European, and global tiers. And in short, obviously, it means that One Health does not have borders, which is an important concept of One Health, which we obviously struggle with because it makes it rather open-ended concept. Interestingly, also in this definition is that they provide the 4 C's, as they call it, namely that One Health should be operated through coordinated communication, collaboration, coordination, and capacity building, the 4 C's. And all 4 of them we'll touch upon briefly in the presentation, and obviously is of interest to all of us. So if you look back a bit in literature, in fact, you see an explosion or moderate explosion, an increase of uptake on One Health literature coming out. And then if you look at the sectors which they represent, it's a bit the same picture. It started clearly from the animal, the medicinal and veterinary side, and increasingly also englobed other disciplines, scientific disciplines. But actually still today, environment is clearly lagging behind in comparison to the other disciplines. And also, for example, the issue of social science, which would be a very important connector between the different scientific disciplines, is still under development, still lagging behind a bit. In EFSA, the European Food Safety Authority, we're rather close and dear to One Health. And in fact, I would bring to the table today that actually EFSA is a One Health organization. And this I say because of our origin that you may be familiar with. In the 1990s, there were a number of food scares. Think of dioxin, think of the mad cow's disease, which actually triggered the setup of the General Food Law, by which also the European Food Safety Authority is established. So if you look into the food law under the mission statement for EFSA, you actually will find this definition that you see on the screen, that we shall contribute to a high level of protection of human life and health, animal health and welfare, plant health, and the environment. So, of course, this was in 2000. So at the time, actually, the One Health concept was not yet coined, but actually it is a fully One Health definition. And not surprisingly so, because actually the mad cow's disease, BSE, as you remember, actually was a One Health issue with circularity of animal feed being fed to animals, leading to a disease in animals, the BSE, bovine spongiform encephalitis, leading on turn to a disease in humans. So it's truly a One Health issue that actually also led to the, not only the General Food Law, but the establishment of EFSA. In fact, EFSA does quite a lot of work on One Health. So in different areas, foodborne outbreaks, for example, monitoring together with the ECDC, the Center for Disease Prevention and Control in Stockholm. on different zoonoses, which are diseases transmitted from animals to humans, but also vice versa in some cases, and antimicrobial resistance. And in fact, it struck me in the invitation, antimicrobial resistance was also mentioned as maybe the most well-known and most advanced One Health topic. And in fact, also from our end, we would confirm that in One Health, in the area of antimicrobial resistance, the One Health cooperation is rather well established, where we also as EU agencies, so it's EFSA together with ECDC and with the Medicines Agency, deliver every 3 years a large report on the consumption and resistance in bacteria from humans and animals, the so-called JACRA report. And this makes sense because we've learned over time that actually it does not matter so much where the antibiotics enter the food or the human compartments, which you see depicted on this slide, because we know that in fact resistance is transferred from one compartment to the other, be it at various degrees, but obviously you need to have the full picture in mind to understand the problem, to be able to tackle it. So indeed, antimicrobial resistance is truly a One Health issue, and that needs a One Health response, but certainly is not limited to antimicrobial resistance only, and the cooperation on One Health should go much beyond this important topic. In fact, we discussed earlier that we experience still today rather high temperatures. Here it's 32 degrees today in Parma, where I'm speaking from. Unfortunately, an indication that the climate is changing. We participate now since some time to funerals of glaciers, for example, and there's also other important challenges that our environment goes through. One close again to EFSA's heart is plastic pollution, which is an issue that we know since some time already, but actually only realized relatively shortly that actually what we bring into the environment through the oceans, through fish, comes back to our plate, bringing with it also some public health risks, which we are still trying to understand and quantify. But it goes to show that, in fact, when you formulate a problem, you would need to take a One Health picture to understand the comprehensive, the holistic picture. So would we have taken a One Health approach in Europe globally at the time, some years ago? Maybe we would have anticipated better. In fact, also the fact that plastics come back to us. There's other examples like urban farming, for example, also very promising development, which could be part of the solution to produce more food at varied backgrounds. But of course, before implementing this large scale, you need to know what the risks are. And for example, growing crops in a urban environment means also higher exposure to heavy metals, for example. So we might be eating more metals than we should by eating crops from the urban. So this is a plea to say that, which again is clear, is dear to EFSA's heart, the Food Safety Authority, that we need to know what we're doing before implementing it large scale. Certainly also too many One Health topics, because the implications are wide ranging. Of course, you're familiar with the Sustainable Development Goals, which in Europe translated more or less to the European Green Deal, which under the Green Deal, a number of strategies have been developed over the past years by the Commission, like the chemical strategy, the biodiversity strategy, close to us, the farm to fork strategy. And very interestingly, probably for you, because it involves also many of you, I believe, are the so-called European partnerships that are being established or have been established for most of the cases under the Horizon Europe. These partnerships are very big partnerships with very significant amounts of funding, aiming to bring together the most relevant partners on a given topic, to provide them with serious funding, to be able to produce research which brings a policy impact. So here it's actually an interesting development on the Horizon Europe by renaming a little the earlier instruments that existed, like the joint programming instruments, etc., under this European partnership umbrella to deliver research which is impactful. And there, obviously, also the agencies are getting involved more and more in these European partnerships, like, for example, the PARC, the Animal Health and Welfare one, and for sure also the AMR one, which is due to start next year, 2025, actually. So living in this changing environment, obviously also EFSA, after 20 years of our existence, on our 20th birthday, actually, we organized the so-called One Conference, One Health, One Environment, One Society in Brussels. I think a number of the people in the audience may have participated to this conference. And for us, it was a very important occasion, not only to bring together the relevant stakeholders like the Commissioner for Health, and many people from the Commission and the Parliament. But actually, it was an occasion to work together very closely with our EU agencies, so the ECDC, the Environmental Agency, the Chemicals Agency in Helsinki, and the Medicines Agency in Amsterdam, to co-create this program. And that has been very fruitful, we believe. We had a very positive feedback on the conference, but also for us, it led to a number of important policy recommendations. Namely, we are clear that we need a transition to sustainable food production. And there's a number of, for example, there's a dedicated European partnership on this. There's a number of EU policies to move in that direction. And for us, it means to develop also scientific advice, which is our core business, and communication from a One Health perspective. So the main recommendation, the main outcome maybe from this One Conference was that we as agencies together need to apply better the One Health approach in order to support the transition to sustainable food systems. Importantly, also in one of the sessions, we agreed with the different agencies, the 5 agencies which I mentioned, to actually start working together in what we call the One Health Task Force, cross-agency task force, because we understand that we are used to define research needs from our own perspective. Increasingly over time, we've started learning to do that. But actually now maybe it's timely that we start doing that also from a transdisciplinary perspective. So not only each of us coming with our own research needs, which still will need to continue under the different programs, but on top actually also to define One Health, probably a One Health research agenda, ideally also ring-fenced and promoted from the European Commission in their next, the 10th framework program, due to start in 2027. Which could be supported by research needs formulation from the agencies together, obviously, with the many stakeholders. So we started working with our task force, and I'm happy again to report that this task force is alive and kicking, again, with these 5 agencies that you see on the slide. And we agreed on 4 priority areas to work: strategic coordination, the research coordination, which I just mentioned, to formulate these research needs, stakeholder engagement, because all of us obviously interact with the many different stakeholders related to One Health, with of course a lot of overlap. So that could be benefit of fine-tuning, of having a common doorbell. And finally, we said that we will work on joint activities, including hopefully also to build or at least support the building of the One Health capacity. And again, I'm very happy to be invited today to speak to you, not only from EFSA's perspective, but also from this cross-agency task force on One Health. One of the examples how we already cooperate is the JAPRA report on antimicrobial resistance, which I mentioned earlier. That actually has increased recently also to a broader perspective, namely the resistance to azole fungicides, which involves not only the 3 agencies, but actually the 5 plus the Joint Research Center, because here it seems that maybe the environmental use of azoles, which is used in plant protection products and biocides, industrial chemicals and veterinary medicines, actually may drive the development of resistance also in the human domain. So it's clearly, again, a One Health issue that needs transdisciplinary cooperation, in this case from the 5 main agencies in Europe working on this. how to do One Health, which is a question, will be a question that also is addressed at your forum. And unfortunately, to my knowledge, there's no easy answer. I refer here on, as you see on the screen, to the One Health theory of change that has been developed together with the definition by the quadripartite, the four main global players, that were supported by this One Health high-level expert group, who developed in parallel also this One Health theory of change, of which you see the graphical depiction on screen. Namely, they defined the main drivers of One Health. They argued that we need a One Health lens at the different tiers, so local, regional, and global. And they define, interestingly, a number of what they call the pathways of change. And of course, being global players, dealing with the One Health topic, there's no very detailed action plan, but it provides these pathways of change, provide, I believe, crucial high-level actions that one can consider to implement in their own environment. And so we started doing so actually also in EFSA. So we started actually with doing a survey to understand which are the main barriers to applying the One Health approach from our colleagues' perspectives in EFSA. And there, in fact, not so surprisingly, we learned that which you see on the screen, the most highly ranked ones is the boundaries of the regulatory frameworks, because obviously, being an EU agency, we work in the EU regulatory framework, which often is very much defined by section. So there's specific animal health law. There's, for example, less competence on the public health, which is more in the member states domain. So it's not so straightforward actually to have a One Health regulatory framework to operate in. The second highest one is the lack of the cooperation among the One Health actors. That's not new to anybody, I believe, which obviously goes back a long time, that we're used to come from our own scientific discipline, where we have our own jargon that we use and we know to understand each other better, and much less so if you go across different scientific disciplines. The third one is the lagging behind of the environmental dimension, which I also showed in the opening slides. Data, access to data across sectors is a big challenge. And the fifth one will be specifically of your interest, limited education in One Health. So, for example, we have a large panel structure. So we work with 200 panel members and something like 1,500 experts that sit in working groups with EFSA on an annual basis. And we obviously select the people based on top knowledge in their scientific domains. And not surprisingly, not so many of these experts have had formal training in One Health. Simply didn't exist, and there wasn't so much attention at the time. So that is something that probably we'll see changing in the future. And obviously, we're also keen to support from our side where we can, as far as our mandates support that. So on this slide, you see a bit more detail on, and I would only for the sake of time look at the fifth one, the limited education in One Health. Again, this is outcomes of the feedback from our colleagues, where they in fact mentioned this issue that we often still face a siloed approach to One Health education and not so much included in academic curricula. And the last one I also mentioned, many of us are used to our own jargon and terminology that sometimes actually comes even straight from the regulation that we operate in. So it's not at all so straightforward to overcome this, but there have been interesting developments, for example, by developing a One Health glossary. So on this slide, I took from the brochure basically what you will be looking at over these pre-forums, but also mainly at the forum next week, on how to address the issue of One Health, both in research, education, and societal engagement. So that's quite a challenging one. And also opportunities to consider opportunities to apply for grant applications. And there I contribute from my perspective. Obviously, it's not at all a comprehensive overview, but I thought it would be interesting to hear from a practitioner in One Health what opportunities there may be there. So first of all, if you think of the big funding opportunities, and we are all aware, I think, of the Horizon Europe, maybe less so with the EU4Health. It's the public health program, which typically was a rather small program, but has increased after the COVID to, I think, now over €5 billion program, which offers quite a number of interesting One Health opportunities for funding. Another one worth mentioning, which falls somehow under the Horizon Europe, but is clearly has its own brand and accessibility, is the Cost Action Program, which is a program that allows for networking, and there is already some One Health actions being funded through the Cost Action Program, which you could check on the website that is on the screen. And another, I think, important one for Food 2030 pathways. If you think back of the slide where we argued that in order to move to sustainable food systems, we need to apply a One Health approach. And in fact, not surprisingly, we do expect under the Food 2030 pathways, there is already a number of One Health opportunities and would expect that to grow over time. I already mentioned the European partnerships, and there maybe an important one is the One Health AMR, which is more a funding partnership due to take off in 2025, which brings together national funds and European funds on the issue of antimicrobial resistance. And as the name says, very clearly from a One Health perspective. Finally, a very well-known one, the Erasmus program, and there I would mention also the infectious disease One Health master's program, which is a group of the University of Tours, Barcelona, and Hanover that have started a master program already on One Health some years ago. Maybe worth mentioning, if you're not familiar with the EFSA research platform, it's a part of our website, of the EFSA website, where we actually monitor ongoing and upcoming funding opportunities, not only from the European perspective, which are close, which include the ones that you see on the screen, but are a bit broader. But we also monitor some regional funding programs like the Visegrad ones, the Nordic Council ones. And importantly, there's also links to national funding programs, which again includes One Health funding opportunities. So maybe worth a visit. And also we regularly post on this through our social media, LinkedIn and X Twitter. Moving to the issue of capacity building, I thought to share with you the highlights of this article, recent article early this year, Advancing One Health Updated Core Competencies. And the reason it struck me, this article, is because they nicely indicate, they actually summarize the they came to the number 9 core competences. And what I liked in their approach is that they not only speak of theoretical knowledge and awareness, but also the need for transposing skills and values. So they grouped basically their 9 core competencies under these 3 main values, which I believe is inherent to the concept of One Health, that it's not only about theory, it's about practice, but first of all, it's probably about mindset, which again, I saw also in your brochure to be considered. So if you're interested in learning more on this, there's the link here on the slides that will be shared. And there's another, the link publication refers back to this Togami paper, where again, you see the screen, the link on the slide, that also provides a number of recommendations. Again, to be clear on the core competences, to include not only well-represented disciplines, but also other less represented disciplines when defining a One Health program. The focus on both practical and applied training, which is, I think, close to our heart, and emphasize the importance of communication, coordination, and collaboration. And this paper, interestingly, has also a step-by-step approach that could be considered if you're interested. For sure, I should mention also, and I thank the One Health EGP, the European Joint Program, which just has come to an end, for sharing their slide with me. This has been a very large program of €90 million co-funded between member states and the European Commission. which now ended actually the end of September, just a few weeks ago. And a part of their program they have dedicated to education and training activities. So a number of PhDs, a number of short-term mission workshops and summer schools, and obviously they developed quite a number of educational material as well. And the beauty of the EGP, one of the beauties is that everything is available, accessible on their website. In preparing for this presentation, actually, I reached out to DGP and they kindly shared with me their take on the status from their experience with the educational training. And I agreed, obviously, to bring to your attention the fact that they think that One Health is there more and more in undergraduate and postgraduate degree programs, but it would need to be integrated into overarching strategies, which is happening in a number of universities. A number of universities across Europe are teaching both medics, vets, and other researchers together in a joint fashion. A number of funding bodies, an increasing number actually, is promoting One Health, and I already mentioned a few funding opportunities. They say, and I would agree, that we can expect additional funding opportunities to emerge over time. Again, I think very timely for you to organize this conference to anticipate this increase, hopefully in funding opportunities to be able to react to them. However, better models for integrating One Health education and training will need to be developed, and also to integrate better between the different scientific disciplines, medical, veterinary, and other scientific curricula. They also rightfully remind that ECDC, the European Centre for Disease Control, has a number of fellowship programs in place, the MEDIEPED, the EPIED, and the UFEM program, with the link if you want to have more information, which is actually training people from a One Health perspective. So they obviously come from the infectious disease angle, but they train people from a One Health perspective through a very interesting fellowship program. Indeed, this fellowship program has been mimicked actually by EFSA some years ago, the European, where we established the EUFORA fellowship program, which basically consists to move people for 1 year. So typically these are beginning mid-career professionals, to move them for 1 year to another country for a fellowship to be trained hands-on on risk assessment and risk communication in another institute, National Food Authority in most cases. So this is to say that, in fact, both ECDC and EFSA actually has fellowship program with hands-on training in practice training. Again, in preparing this presentation, I also reached out to another colleague that we cooperate with frequently from the World Health Organization, the European region, and he also informed me that they recently organized a conference in Kazakhstan with the regional quadripartite One Health coordination mechanism. Each region of the WHO across the globe has their coordination mechanism. Again, they made the case that there's a need for theoretical and practical training for the One Health principles, but not only for the students, but also to provide for additional capacity building for the teachers and for research grant opportunities, a bit similar to what we've been saying earlier. Finally, I would draw your attention to the One Health Joint Plan of Action, which again is a product from the quadripartite, again developed together with the One Health Theory of Change. They also developed this global plan for action, and Action 6 aims to create for One Health academic and in-service training programs from all the different scientific disciplines. And if you look into more detail in that action plan, you will see, for example, also Action 6.4 to create this One Health training course for in-service professionals. And I bring this to your attention because in the annex of that One Health action plan, you also find a list of available material. Some of the bullet points that you see on the right of the screen actually are clickable in this annex. So that brings you to a number of material that is available and brought together in this One Health joint plan of action. The last bullet on that screen, actually, the tripartite One Health competency framework I've participated in, and that now should become available in hopefully a few weeks. The end of October is the plan, which actually is again a product of the tripartite, so the WMO, FAO, and the WOHA, bringing out a definition of the One Health competencies, which are considered fundamental for field epidemiology training in all the different sectors, so human, veterinary, and environmental sector. So this actually is should become a very interesting checklist to see what are the competences, what level of competences are required to be able to work at the frontline, intermediate, and the advanced level. Obviously, their focus is for field epidemiology, but it's probably a very interesting overview of capacities needed from all the boxes that you see on the left of the screen. And they will also produce guidance for mentorship, for evaluation, and for continuing education. So hopefully that should become available soon. And then the final interesting paper I found and wanted to share with you is this overview of capacity building opportunities, which is from last year, done by the GIZ consultancy, which is a desktop study, which includes a number of recommendations. And an interesting one I thought here is the joint degrees between the North-South, but also across within Europe probably, to be able to offer joint programs, which is very close, obviously, to the concept of One Health, to go across disciplines and across walls. So with that, I would give you the floor back to you, Jos, and I'm happy to interact with any questions or observations. And I guess I'll stop sharing.
Well, thank you very much, Stef, for your maybe institutional view on what is happening in the One Health field. I found one question in the chat from Alessia Lefebvre, Institut Agro. So I read it, and I'll then ask you to maybe comment briefly upon it. We have 8 more minutes in this webinar, so that's the time scope we have.
Oh.
So the question reads as, can we expect any push from the employers and job markets, beyond international and European organizations? Are One Health related competencies already appearing in job descriptions? If yes, in which type of job descriptions, which countries, which sectors, which jobs? That's actually the question posted here. Probably not an obvious question, but please go ahead.
It's obvious for me to answer. I can give you my perspective on it. Yes, I think it's simply a matter of time, and it will increase. To my knowledge, for example, in our organization, we have not formulated, although we have a specific unit that deals with One Health issues. And in fact, we have merged the unit from 2 earlier units to strengthen the One Health concept. So I think it's simply a matter of time that we will see that also appear in job descriptions. And especially, I think, international. And there I see the increase already, as I mentioned, by the offer from academia to offer One Health training is increasing. And that obviously is probably an anticipation of the job market. But I don't have the full overview, obviously, of the job market. No. Thanks. Back to you, Jos.
Yes, thank you. I didn't find any other question in the chat. Maybe I can have one to conclude this webinar. So today we had an integrated look and an institutional perspective on the One Health topic, let's say. Tomorrow we'll have one dealing with the animal perspective, and finally on Wednesday the planetary, the environmental perspective will be addressed. So you are trained as a medical doctor, so the human perspective is probably very natural for you. If you consider the 2 others, the animal one and the environmental one, in which relationship do you see most challenges? Where are the stakes the highest? Is it in the relationship between the human health and the animal health? Or is it between the human health and the environmental issues? Where do you see most urgencies for research and for implementation of regulations and things like that?
Yeah, thanks. Very interesting question, Jos. It relates much to my own professional career. I'm a medical doctor, as you say. I came to work in EFSA now 15 years ago, and actually I'm one of the few doctors, medical doctors in EFSA. There's quite a number of veterinarians, there's many food scientists, and there's many environmental nutritionists. But it's not so, and many toxicologists actually. So it's not so straightforward in my environment to come from a medical background, which probably means it's not surprising that I'm actually asked to lead here in EFSA on the One Health perspective. What is most important between the sectors? I'm not sure I could quantify that. I think it's very obvious that environmental is lagging behind. And for example, if you look back at the issue of antimicrobial resistance, we've seen that shift. It started from the human-animal interface. So in the beginning, it was doctors and veterans being involved. And only slowly we've come to realize the importance also of the environmental, the transfer. And now, for example, there will be a new water use directive, which actually obliges countries also to monitor the use of water, and that allows for monitoring also, for example, the transfer of resistance genes through water. So I think that shows that typically environment is a little outside our common environment, how we have been organized in Europe. And therefore, I'm really happy that they're an active part of our cross-agency task force, the environment. And certainly that has now a very important political attention, of course. We spoke about climate change earlier, and climate change will bring also quite a number of food safety issues. They already do. And obviously affects also infectious disease spread. So I'm not sure I can say what is the most important one, but more and more we realize how interconnected we are. And therefore, I think we need to not on this, if you remember the opening slide with two blocks, we need the comprehensive one, not from one sector to the other, but we need a full picture.
Thank you very much. Before closing, I will give the floor to Mieke Uitendalen, who has an oral question, I believe, not a written one.
Yeah, sorry, I was too lazy to write it. So, Stef, indeed, nice to hear your perspective, especially the last slides on education we're interested in. But it's already a very complex issue. This One Health, you need to. Normally, we want to deepen the knowledge. Now we have to have deep knowledge, and on top, we have to be this T-shaped transdisciplinary knowledge. But I might ask something really in addition to it, because you look at it now as you said, the urban farming example. You had about this is, I guess, challenging. You can say One Health, and you said, but maybe then you also coming from EFSA food safety, we might focus on food safety things, but then on the other hand, there might also be benefits of certain things which might have safety issues, you know, if we start doing circular things and so on. So I'm wondering, is that also, how do you see that as part of One Health? I mean, you have the degree of protection, but you have also opportunities, benefits for society. Do we need to balance that? That's also part of your definition?
Yeah. I'm not sure it is really all part of the definition, Mieke. You've seen the definitions are really rather broad, so everything falls a bit under it. And I think we do well as society, and also for your exercise, probably in academia, do well of not focusing too much on trying to define the concept, but rather explore the opportunities that the concept brings. And there I like your question a lot, because obviously there is a One Health issue to everything. And I think the trick will be to say, okay, what is the One Health issue here and how can we build on it? And yes, I like the urban farming one. I mean, it relates, for example, to what we call the risk-benefit assessments that we do here in EFSA. Very limited, so because typically we are set up to provide risk assessments, not so much benefit assessments. And actually, the big next step would be to go to sustainability assessment. So how do we produce food? What is the impact on the environment? But there we lack a regulatory framework, and we also lack clarity of indicators. So for example, the metrics, how do we define sustainability? So how can you measure the impacts of it? And there, I think we still have a long way to go. But the opportunity would be, I believe, is that already today we can start saying we need to define things from a One Health perspective. So we need to define sustainability from a One Health perspective. Then we need to implement it, and that's gonna be it's gonna take a long time. And if you think of the example of AMR, I mean, we started recognizing as a public health issue well over 20 years ago, and still we're far from an ideal way of intervening. We still struggle with it.
Thank you. It's 2:00. We agreed that the webinar would not take longer than 1 hour, despite the small interruptions, but finally everything worked well, Stef.
Sorry,
I want to thank you sincerely for your contribution, for your views and perspectives on this One Health team. And before closing the webinar, I just want to remind you that we will have another one tomorrow at 1 p.m. about the animal perspective, and on Wednesday at 1 p.m. as well on the environmental perspective of the One Health domain.
Excellent.
Thank you all for participating, and hope to see you either in one of the next webinars, either in the context of ICA activities to come. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day.